Judging by what the Russian newspapers have been saying on their websites, Moscow perceives the Alaska summit as a victory for the Kremlin, believing that President Trump has moved closer to the Kremlin's position on the war in Ukraine. Moskovsky Komsomolets writes, shortly after parting ways with Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump said it was determined by all that the best way to end the horrific war between Russia and Ukraine is to go directly to a peace agreement, which would end the war, and not a mere ceasefire agreement, which oftentimes do not hold up. Trump himself came to this conclusion following his conversation with the Russian president, and this is an obvious tactical victory for Russian diplomacy. According to some reports, Russia is demanding that Ukraine withdraw from parts of the Donbass that are still under Ukrainian control. And if there is no peace agreement, the Russian leadership, I suspect, will not be too upset. Putin has been banking on, and continues to bank on, the Russian army, on its ability to force the Ukrainian army into a corner, and by doing so, force Kiev to adopt a slightly different negotiating position. Komsomolskaya Pravda too sees the Alaska summit as a diplomatic win for the Kremlin. It's becoming clear that Vladimir Putin needed a personal meeting with Trump so that Russia wouldn't fall into the main diplomatic trap. Europe and Ukraine have bet everything on one card. A ceasefire doesn't benefit Russia, so we will demand a ceasefire with all our might, and every time Moscow refuses, we will shout that Putin wants the war to continue. Face to face, Putin has smashed these myths, diligently nurtured by Britain, the European Union and Kiev. He explained to Trump, Russia is for peace, but a ceasefire is categorically disadvantageous to us, because in this case we lose all the advantage on the front line. So let's immediately discuss a peace agreement, skipping the ceasefire stage. In the meantime, Russia will resolve its problems, first and foremost, on the front line. And this is another huge diplomatic victory for Vladimir Putin. Our soldiers have the opportunity to calmly liberate one or even several settlements a day, while Europe and Ukraine resist peace. The writer uses the word liberate, but in effect this is all about seizing and occupying more Ukrainian territory. Just as important, from the podium in Anchorage, the Russian president repeated his phrase that to achieve peace it is necessary to eradicate the root causes of the crisis. Russia is not abandoning its goals. Of course, for the sake of peace, we can make some reasonable concessions, which is clearly important for Trump, but we will never give up on what's most important. In short, the Alaska summit is a great victory for Russia, which seeks peace, and for Trump, who dreams of peace and the Nobel Prize, and for the United States, which is moving away from the role of participant in the conflict and confidently moving towards the role of peacemaker. Nezavismaya Gazeta. At a press conference in Anchorage, Vladimir Putin said, in my opinion, the most important, the most significant, the most desirable thing that happened at the talks. We see that the President of the United States shows an understanding of Russia's national interests. This is the key to understanding the further development of the international situation, the settlement of the conflict, and the development of future relations, at least in the next 3.5 years, will take place according to the best scenario for Russia. What happened in Alaska is the rupture of this united front of the West against Moscow. It seems that Trump heard Putin and perceived our interests as legitimate and, most importantly, instrumental for building a new configuration of world politics. By the way, what Nezavismaya Gazeta calls a press conference turned out not to be a press conference. Presidents Putin and Trump took no questions. Izvestia. The Anchorage summit was an important signal that Moscow and Washington are ready for dialogue to end the conflict in Ukraine, although practical solutions are still far away.